Hey everyone, welcome back. You guys really outdid yourselves this time with the source material. This deep dive, we're taking a look at this wild research paper someone sent in, Escalating the Crazy.
Uh-huh.
Basically, it's all about dealing with harassment from an ex, but not how you might think. This paper suggests, get this, that by mirroring and even like ramping up your ex's bad behavior,
Oh, wow.
you might actually push them to back off.
Interesting.
Yeah, we're talking some pretty intense stuff here, like stalking,
Yeah.
those endless calls and texts, even, and this is rough, trying to turn your friends against you, like full-on sabotage. But here's the kicker, and the whole reason this paper is so fascinating, it claims some pretty high success rates.
Really? Like, what are we
We're
talking?
talking 90% for getting stalking to stop,
Wow.
80% for shutting down unwanted communication, and get this, 70% for ending social sabotage. So
That's-
crazy, right?
Yeah, I mean, if it works, that's amazing, but how?
I know, right? And the examples are nuts. Like, picture this. Your ex is stalking you. So you hire a bunch of people to stalk him right back.
Oh my gosh.
The study calls this reverse stalking.
Wow.
Or your ex is blowing up your phone.
Right.
Nonstop calls, texts, the whole deal. You send back this super unsettling voicemail, maybe even using one of those voice changer apps. But it's vague, just something that implies you're always watching.
Like a psychological thriller or something.
Exactly. And as a kind of the whole point the study suggests, making the harasser the one who feels harassed.
Turning the tables completely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But the question is, how does this actually work? Like from the psychological standpoint, why would making someone more uncomfortable make them want to stop?
Yeah.
That's what we're going to get into right after this. So we're back, and honestly, this whole fight fire with the dumpster fire thing, it's wild, right?
Yeah, it's a lot to take in.
But I gotta say, the fact that the study found it could be effective, that's got me curious. So like, what's the psychology here? Why would these crazy tactics actually work?
Right. So the study points to a few key psychological mechanisms, and the first one is projection.
Okay, projection, I've heard of that.
So people who harass, they often project like their own insecurities, their own anxieties onto their exes.
So it's not really even about the ex, it's more about them.
Exactly. It's like they're trying to get rid of their own issues by putting them on someone else.
Okay, so by mirroring their behavior back at them, you're making them face their own stuff.
You got it. You're holding up a mirror to those anxieties they're trying so hard to avoid.
It's like that reverse stalking thing we talked about.
Right. They think they're in control, but suddenly they're the ones being watched, feeling that same fear.
Wow. Yeah, that's got to be unsettling.
Absolutely. And that brings us to the second mechanism, cognitive dissonance.
Cognitive dissonance, that's a mouthful. What's that about?
So, cognitive dissonance, it's that uncomfortable feeling we get when we're holding two conflicting beliefs at once.
Okay, I think I get that. Like saying one thing but doing another.
Exactly. So, the harasser, they might tell themselves their actions are totally justified, but then they get a taste of their own medicine.
And it creates a conflict because they wouldn't like it happening to them.
Exactly. Suddenly, their actions don't match their beliefs, and it's super uncomfortable.
It's like realizing you're being a hypocrite.
You got it. It's like, being mad at someone for being late when you were just late yesterday. It doesn't feel good.
No, not at all.
And that discomfort, it can be a powerful motivator for change.
So it's like holding two magnets together, the same poles. Eventually, something has to give
Exactly. And in this case, it might be the harasser finally backing off.
because they can't deal with the inner turmoil.
Right. But projection and cognitive dissonance, those are just part of it. There's another big factor at play here, fear.
Fear, like being scared of what the other person might do.
Well, it's more about triggering their own fear response. When you escalate things, you're pushing their fight or flight button.
Okay, I think I see where you're going with this.
Think about it. Remember that feeling in a horror movie when the killer jumps out?
Oh yeah, that jolt of fear.
Exactly. That's your fight or flight response kicking in. You want to get away from the threat.
Makes sense.
And that unsettling voicemail, the feeling of being watched, it does the same thing to the harasser.
It makes them feel like the one being hunted.
Exactly. They've become the character in their own horror movie, and the only way out is to disengage, to stop.
Wow. Okay, so we've got projection, cognitive dissonance, and now a good dose of fear. Intense stuff.
It's a powerful combination for sure.
But before anyone listening goes out and hires a private investigator, I think we need to talk about the downsides here.
Yeah, there are definitely some things to consider.
Okay, so we've been talking about this whole out-crazing your ex thing, and I gotta say, the psychology behind it, it's kind of brilliant. But let's be real, this isn't exactly relationship advice, right?
Yeah, this is definitely more of a thought experiment than a how-to guide.
Exactly. Like, as fascinating as this research is, I think it's best left in the lab.
Absolutely. And the study even says that while these tactics might work, there are some big risks.
Like what? What could go wrong?
Well, first of all, there's no guarantee it'll actually work.
I guess there's no such thing as a sure thing, especially with something like this.
Right, and it could totally backfire.
Oh, I see. Like, make the situation even worse.
Exactly. Imagine trying to out crazy someone who loves drama.
You'd just be giving them more fuel.
Exactly. You might end up making them even more intense.
And not to mention, wouldn't this be, like, emotionally exhausting for everyone involved?
Oh, absolutely. We're talking about messing with someone's deepest fears and insecurities.
Yeah, that's not something to take lightly, even if it does work.
Right, you might end up feeling even more messed up than when you started.
It's like that saying, never wrestle with a pig. You both get dirty, but the pig likes it.
Exactly. Sometimes the best thing you can do is just walk away.
Focus on yourself and move on.
Exactly. And the truth is, there are much healthier ways to deal with harassment.
Like what? What would you suggest?
Well, if you ever feel unsafe, your first step should always be to get legal protection.
Right, like a restraining order.
Exactly. It sets clear boundaries, and there are consequences if they're crossed.
And I imagine that can feel really empowering, knowing you have that legal backing.
Absolutely. And another good option is professional mediation.
So working with a therapist or a counselor.
Right. They can help you set boundaries, communicate effectively.
And even talk to your ex in a safe and structured environment.
Exactly. It's about finding a peaceful resolution, not winning a war.
So as much as we love a good deep dive into the darker side of human behavior, this isn't something to try at home, right?
Definitely not. This is more about understanding the psychology behind these situations.
Yeah, like knowing how projection, cognitive dissonance, and fear can come into play.
Exactly. And that knowledge, it can be helpful in all sorts of situations, not just with exes.
Right, like dealing with a difficult coworker, or even that one friend who always pushes your buttons.
Exactly. It's about understanding human behavior, which can be useful in all aspects of life.
So the next time you find yourself facing a situation like this, before you go hiring a team of professional stalkers, take a deep breath. Think about the psychology we've discussed, and see if there's a healthier, more constructive path forward.
Absolutely. And remember, sometimes the best way to win is to walk away and focus on your own well-being.
Couldn't agree more. Well, that was quite the deep dive. Big thanks to everyone who suggested this research paper. Definitely kept us on our toes. And if you have any thoughts on this, we'd love to hear them. Share your stories, your insights, everything down in the comments. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss out on future deep dives. Until next time, stay curious.